Not that one. 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 This one. This is the one that we're going for. This is the group that we support. It was in July, and my cousin Eldad had just walked me past a dozen different organizations opposing Prime Minister Netanyahu and his efforts to curb the power of the Israeli judiciary. And after finally finding the one with which he agreed, we got some swag, donated some money, and got on our way to join 150,000 people for a protest in the heart of Tel Aviv. We chanted, yelled, danced, and sung Israel's national anthem, but it was unmistakable that we were not a coherent whole so much as a mixed multitude. As another Israeli cousin of mine reflected that evening, Israel had once again become a country in which even the Jews were divided into 12 different tribes across 3 spiritual boundaries: Ashkenazi and Mizrahi, secular, traditional, and ultra-Orthodox, wealthy, and disadvantaged. This suggests that the protests, the counter-protests, and even the crisis in Israeli democracy may be symptoms of division even more than they are underlying causes. It feels like the state of Israel and Jewish people are wrestling with fundamental questions about what we have in common and our obligations to one another, even to those with whom we disagree. The Torah provides guidance on how we might navigate these differences in Numbers chapter 32. After almost 40 years of wandering in the desert, the Israelites are at the cusp of reaching the promised land. They're preparing to conquer it when 2 tribes, the tribes of Gad and Reuben, announced to Moses and his fellow leaders that they no longer wish to settle in it at all. Instead, they hope to remain in the fertile land on the far side of the Jordan, sustaining themselves as cattle herders rather than farmers tilling and sowing the promised land. God is incensed, viewing the request of Reuben and Gad as an act of defiance. But in time, Moses helps God soften God's stance and articulates 3 principles of common cause that all Israelites must maintain, even across geographic and ideological divides. First, open communication and critique. Moses shares openly of his upset that the leaders of Gad and Reuben seem more interested in financial opportunity than in realizing the dream that they have shared with the other tribes since before the Exodus itself. Moses' chastisements are not, however, intended to sever ties, so much as to clear the air and enable them to find a way forward, despite very real differences. Second, Moses requires the tribes of Gad and Reuben to help conquer the promised land, even if they return to tend their flocks outside of its borders. They must share equally in the burden of military service, even if they reside elsewhere. Third, the tribes of Gad and Reuben affirm common cause and loyalty to God while forming the first diaspora of our people. They do not worship other deities or take on practices that run counter to the core beliefs and values of other Israelites. We read about this in particular in Numbers 32, verse 31. V'ya'anu b'nei Gad u'b'nei Reuven lemor et asher diber Adonai el avdecha ken na'aseh. The Gadites and the Reubenites said in reply, "Whatever God has spoken concerning your servants, that we will do." The lessons from these passages in Torah abound for our own time. First, for how long have we as American Jews repressed our own misgivings about Israeli governmental policies for the sake of presenting a united front? We can wait no longer to make clear that dismantling Israel's democratic institutions would pose a danger not only to Israelis, but to the well-being of the Jewish people as a whole. Correspondingly, for how long have Israelis held back in their critiques of American Jews and American Jewry, which is thriving by many measures, but has a declining sense of belonging to a people? Many Israelis feel as though American Jews are a tribe apart. Open dialogue is overdue between homeland and diaspora, much as it is within Israel itself and across streams of American Judaism. The absence of difficult conversations has proven more harmful than even the tensest of interchanges might be. Our promise to each other must be honesty and must be dialogue. Second, no matter how critical we are of the current Israeli administration, we must not lose sight of the significant threats that Israel faces in an ongoing, existential way. American Jews should openly express views about how the American government can best curb Iran's direct and proxy threats against Israel, while supporting the positive diplomatic efforts underway between Israel and Saudi Arabia. We do not need to agree on the specifics of these and other positions, but cannot sit on the sidelines when Israel's well-being itself is at stake. Our promise to each other must be protection. Relatedly, note how all the ancient tribes of Israel were required to perform military service. I'm not suggesting that American Jews sign up for service in a foreign army, but rather that American Jews support universal military or national service among Israelis. Our promise to each other must be equal service, however it is customary to serve in each population center. Finally, we need to resurface and rearticulate that which does bind us together in higher purpose. It might not be a unifying notion of God. It might not be the commemoration of historical tragedies. It might not even be shared values, but perhaps it can be the open-ended rabbinic conversations that have continued for over 2 millennia. What it means to be Jewish today cannot be defined or delimited by simple doctrine, but rather participation in the conversation, wrestling with ancient teachings and modern contexts, learning from masterful teachers who passed away centuries, if not millennia ago, but whose words live on in us. In leaving unresolved our greatest conversations, we've created space to renew our dialogues about Jewish higher purpose today. The crisis for Israeli democracy is real, it is present, and it is painful. It calls for our response, but it also lays bare the fact that we face a deeper crisis in explaining what it means to be Jewish today and why we remain steadfastly loyal to our kin, even when we are in diaspora. American Jews are the modern-day tribes of Reuben and Gad. We are proof that not even the promised land can answer all of the needs of all of the people. But we also embody the hope that from literal and metaphorical places of difference, we can renew the dialogue that binds us together. May we deepen our sense of common cause in this new year. Can you hear RHM?